Good afternoon and welcome to the TheEdCollabGathering number 11. We are so happy to have Pernille Ripp and Amira Abdel Al with us to talk about the global Read Aloud. So welcome to our session. Today, I want to introduce our speakers who will talk about their collaborative project, the Global Read Aloud. Pernille Ripp is a member of the Educator Collaborative. She's an expert in literacy and technology integration and dedicates her research and practice to developing engaging and empowering students and communities. In 2010, Pernille founded the Global Read Aloud, a global literacy initiative that she will share with us today. She's also an author of 2 books, Passionate Learners, How to Engage and Empower Your Students, and Empowering Schools, Empowering Students, both focusing on creating learning spaces and communities where students thrive and all stakeholders are empowered and passionate about learning. And joining Pernille is Amira Abdel Al, who works as a teacher at the New Horizons School in Irvine, California. New Horizon is an independent Islamic school in Irvine, California that's distinguished as a strong academic institution in line with values of excellence. With the one-to-one laptop program in the 5th and 6th grade, students are able to engage in creation, communication, and collaboration with the global community. A project that is near and dear to her heart. Amira has been part of the Global Read Aloud project for the last 5 years. It has been life-changing and groundbreaking every year. So today you will hear about reading, reflecting on, and sharing novels in a global environment. So Pernille and Amira, take it away.
Hi, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at. Amira is coming. She is just running up to in front of her computer right now due to some technical difficulties. I am excited, though, to kick this off because I founded the Global Read Aloud in 2010, as Camilla said, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then it's going to be all about the kids, because that's really why we're here for. So my name is Pernille Ripp. I'm coming live from my classroom because what do teachers do on Saturdays? We work. And the Global Read Aloud started with Neil Gaiman. In case you can recognize his picture, my husband and I were driving in the car and listening to NPR, and they mentioned Neil Gaiman, and being a super fan of Neil Gaiman, I turned it up and I tuned in. On NPR, they were talking about the One Book, One Twitter initiative that was happening around the world, where someone had decided to read All American Gods written by Neil Gaiman and then use a common hashtag to connect people around this global book club. I was fascinated, and so I turned to my husband and I said, somebody should do that for kids. And he said, well, why don't you? Well, here's the thing. I had just gotten on Twitter that summer. This was the summer of 2010. And so I didn't really know how to do a global project. But that night I went home and I wrote a blog post. And in it, I had this messy, muddled idea of perhaps reading the same book as other people and then having our students connect using technology. So the very first tweet ever made about the Global Read Aloud happened in June of 2010, and this is it. How about a Global Read Aloud with a tied-in wiki? I had just learned about wikis, and so I was very excited to try this new technology. Now, for those of you who use wikis or have used them, you may know that they're not great for a lot of collaboration. And so quickly, the Global Read Aloud didn't just come into a wiki, but started to be created in other spaces as well. I didn't expect a response, and yet the response was immediate. Right away, I got people tweeting me back saying, yes, sounds good. When? How can we sign up? Where do we sign up? Which book should we read? And I sat behind my computer screen and thought, what did I just do? Because I had no idea what I was doing. And I think that that's sometimes what happens when we accidentally create projects. We have a great idea, we find some courage, we take the first step, and then all of a sudden, we realize that there now is work to do. And so we do this in our classrooms all of the time. And that night I decided, well, let's find a home and let's figure it out. So I reached out to those that knew more about technology than me. I created a blog so that people could read about it. And I created a sign-up sheet because that's all I knew we needed. And so I realized quickly on with the Global Read Aloud that it wasn't that we needed anything fancy. It just had to work. Because as teachers, that's what we do in our classrooms all the time. We don't spend a lot of time creating fancy lessons. We create lessons that are meaningful and that will bring new perspective to our kids. So we had a blog, we had a way to sign up, and we started trying to figure out what was this actually going to look like. And so that year in 2010 in September, we did it late September, we kicked off with the very first book, which that year was The Little Prince. And I realize now, looking back on the Global Read Aloud, that I was scared. I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't even know if my students would like the read aloud, but I knew that maybe something good would come out of this. And so we tried it. And those who signed up tried it as well. I also realized early on that I couldn't be the hub of all things Global Read Aloud, that while I created it, I needed to create spaces for educators to reach out and connect with each other, because this project needed to fit any kind of classroom that wanted to sign up, or even kids that weren't in any classrooms. It also couldn't center around certain technology because we don't all have access to the same things. In fact, now you don't even have to use technology to connect in the Global Read Aloud. Every year we have people that use postcards or letters to connect with others, either due to choice or circumstances that are beyond their control. And so quickly on, I realized that this couldn't just be a lesson plan where you had to follow a certain path, but instead had to be an idea that people could shape and mold and turn into something that mattered to them. And so I laugh now when I get emails saying, well, is this Common Core aligned, or whatever other standards people are faced with? Well, yes, it is, because you make it whatever you want. And having global connections and collaborations is truly always going to be aligned to whatever standards you're facing, because in our quest to create amazing classrooms, we're trying to create more empathetic and kind human beings. And the Global Read Aloud centers around that. The first year we voted, and in the end, the choice came down to me, and I ended up choosing The Little Prince, knowing that even though my fourth graders maybe wouldn't understand everything that happened in the book, but that it would still be an amazing reading experience, and that the book offered up ways for us to have conversations where we could connect with others. I remember the reaction of my fourth graders that year, and how amazed they were that kids around the world were reading the same book as them. Kids were having the same thoughts. They drew and visualized as we read aloud and asked questions and answered those from others. And for those four weeks, they knew that they were part of something bigger. After the project ended, I thought, well, that was nice. And then somebody said, well, when are we doing it again? And I thought to myself, what do you mean doing it again? This was a ton of work. And yet I had also seen the change in my students, because they knew all about how different kids were around the world, but they hadn't realized how alike they were. And I think that that's something we really need to start emphasizing in our classrooms as well. We are so good in bringing in literature that shows off all of our differences. But when do we find projects that unite us and show that even though the sun may set at another time than us, or we have opposite seasons, or believe in different things, or function in different environments, that we share so many similarities and have so many of the same hopes and dreams? So I decided the next year that sure, we could do it again, and let's see if anybody would sign up. Well, since 2010, more and more people have joined the Global Read Aloud, and every year breaks a new record for me. That second year, we had 2 books. It was the first year that we branched out and didn't just do 1 book, and we did Tuck Everlasting and Flet Stanley. The third year is one that I will always remember, because the third year in 2012 is the year of the one and only Ivan. And if you haven't read The One and Only Ivan, it's one of those books that will change you. But it also marks the first year that an author decided to be a part of the project and all of a sudden brought in the actual writers behind the books. The next year we expanded once again, and we did 3 books, and every year it has grown to what it is today, where we have a picture book author, this year, of course, being the incredible Lauren Castillo, and then we read 4 books depending on what age group you're in. We have some authors involved, and every year the project grows. That number was from this morning, 816,711 kids. And when I went back 15 minutes later to check something else on my ever-expanding spreadsheet, 50 more kids had already signed up. And I think about it, that here we are with a little idea, and I didn't know if it would work, and yet now almost 1 million kids are going to be connected for 6 weeks in October, because they all get to listen and experience the same book. I asked Catherine Applegate what it meant to be a part of the Global Read Aloud, and so my portion of the project will end with this, or the presentation, because I think of all those kids that are learning not just about new worlds as the authors describe, but also are learning about each other, because that's what the Global Read Aloud is about. It's about using one book to connect the world so that we can understand that while we may not look alike or even think alike, we are more alike than we will ever know. Every year, I am blown away by all of the things that schools do to bring unity in and to connect with others. And so when I heard that Amira and her students were presenting about this project, I knew that these were some of the best people to present about it, because they have truly embraced what it means to be a part of the Global Read Aloud. And I'm so proud that they're here to share their story. And if I can turn off screen sharing, that will be even better. Hang on. Okay, Amira, take it away. I will turn off my screen sharing.
Thank you so much, Pernille. I hope can you guys hear me okay there?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, great. So, you know, as Pernille is sharing her experiences and what motivated her and why, I can't help but fight back tears, to be quite honest, because it has become such an impactful part of our experience in the classroom and beyond. And before I get into our stories about what we wanted to share in our experiences, I first wanted to take a moment to thank the TheEdCollab team for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this. The fact that it is available to all educators, free professional development, is something that I really appreciate and value tremendously. And thank you to the tech team for working tirelessly behind the scenes. You guys have some of the toughest jobs, so we wanted to really thank you for your time. And Pernille, I wanted to take this moment as well to thank you. This is my 7th year as a teacher in my career of teaching. And from day one, I stumbled across your blog, and it's been the influence that has guided me and the drive that has driven my philosophies as an educator. And it has just made this choice of a career as my second career, actually, something that has been beyond meaningful for me and my students, and continues to be. So I did want to thank you for that. So today, you know, I hope in the way that I was inspired and my kids were inspired, I hope that I can inspire each of you, and you'll be hearing stories from my previous students as well. You know, in a time where technology and information and different forms of expression are all at our fingertips, I feel like the biggest thing about all of this as human beings who do have access to these resources is that we are wired to connect. We are innately, you know, geared to be connectors. And I just feel like the Global Read Aloud provides that platform for us as educators and students as learners. I believe the Global Read Aloud gives students the full potential, opportunities to unlock their full potential to be those global ambassadors. And being an educator that is also part of a school where we do focus on developing the whole child, when I came across the Global Read Aloud 6 years ago, I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to provide that for my students. You know, as Pernille had shared, from the Global Read Aloud small beginnings to now reaching over 800,000 students. And if you total that, that's over 1 million students over the years. Imagine how much that has spread exponentially. Similarly, I was able to see that growth from our small beginnings 6 years ago when I joined to now presently, and how much we've become, you know, how much the students have grown. And I had the interesting situation where I taught the same 2 groups of students 2 years in a row because I happened to be both their 5th and their 6th grade teacher. So I got to witness directly the impact that the Global Read Aloud has made on their lives and their outlooks as learners. From their level of involvement into their discussions, how rich their conversations were, how honest their conversations were, realizing that students just like them, we may have some differences, but the ideas that we shared core similarities, have similar thoughts, have maybe can learn from each other because of their different experiences and perspectives. The books that were chosen for the Global Read Aloud project, I feel like have so much purpose behind them. They're not arbitrarily chosen. They've been the driving force for our discussions and for providing such rich experiences. They have become the platform where real life stories are shared through a fictional novel. And so that gives the kids a chance to learn about real life issues, but through reading a novel. And taking it beyond that, they're then able to communicate with students across the globe and learn from one another. Technology is definitely an integral part of our experience. Now, it doesn't have to be for people who may have limited access, but we chose to leverage, we are a one-to-one laptop school, so we chose to leverage our usage of technology in that case. So today I wanted to share some tips. I won't be going into necessarily details of specific projects we did, but I want the general understanding to be that it relates to connectivity and being able to access other kids, to access people from across the globe, both nationally and internationally, and what that means for the learning experience for those students. The first key tool that we use in our classroom is Twitter. And I feel like Twitter is magical. Yes, I'm using that word magical because it's so instant, it's in real time, and it has really opened the doors for me to be able to access ideas. What I do in my classroom, I cannot take sole ownership for it. This is because of the professional learning network that I have been able to grow through accessing Twitter. And the fact that teachers are a part of a learning network that is collaborative, that is a part of this environment where we're willing to share ideas, where we're willing to be in an exchange of providing free information like this conference, that goes to show that we understand what it means to be lifelong learners. And this, I feel like, is an example for our students to also see. It's been the platform where I can instantly connect with teachers following a hashtag. I'm going to have to put a plug in for this year. It's hashtag GRA16. And automatically, I am able to follow, see which teachers are participating, where they're from, what grade they're teaching, and directly contact them. And the response is actually, I feel like, more immediate than email. I'm finding myself using Twitter much more than we use email today. And in addition, it gives me access to resources. Just for example, the other day, I found out a teacher was doing a slow chat. And this year, that is one thing that we're going to be participating in. One of the teachers under hashtag GRA16 and GRA PAX, which is the novel we'll be reading this year, posted that they're looking for people to participate in a slow chat. And that's something I've never, even though I'm an avid Twitter user, I've never actually participated in. With a simple, hey, can we join? Their willingness to allow us to be a part of what they were working on was instant. And now not only are we part of one, but we're a part of another. And we get to connect with literally 6 to 10 schools per Twitter chat. And this is nationally and internationally all the way to China. And so without that connection, I wouldn't have fathomed to be able to have that opportunity for my students. And it was so smooth, and I really encourage teachers who may not be familiar with Twitter to look into it. And it's just as it could start with following the hashtag and just kind of getting an idea to see who's out there, what people are talking about. And for me, the beautiful thing behind it is the willingness of educators to be able to collaborate and develop this ever-increasing professional learning network for us. Another thing through Twitter, Pernille had arranged with authors prior for the books that we had read, Google Hangouts. And we got to participate in a live Google Hangout with the authors. Now, here are my students, all the students participating. They're reading this novel for a whole month. Yes, they're discussing with other classrooms. And they, typically in a classroom, you'd search about the author, maybe read the back of the book to learn about the author. But now they're taking it a step further. And because of the Global Read Aloud, they're able to be a part of a live Google Hangout. And not only that, but we were able to submit questions through Twitter. And so I'll never forget, I had a student who was, thinking, oh, they're never going to answer our question. We're one of thousands of kids. Like, how are we, what's the point of this? And so it was that doubt, right? They had this doubt because they are still learning that, or realizing that they have a voice. For kids, they're like, oh, we're just kids. Who's going to want to listen to us? And the fact that they were given an opportunity through something like this to have that voice, that broke down their judgment. They broke down that assumption that they in fact do have a voice, and they have a strong voice. And so imagine that same student, when we participated in the Google Hangout with Jennifer Home for for the 14th Goldfish, his question was the one that got asked and was the question that got answered by the author herself. And so imagine what, at that moment, I will never forget this. The entire class was like, oh my gosh, that's our student, that's our school. And that moment to them made it underline the fact that no, they do have a voice, that they can be heard, and that they do matter. And so if we look at it and it's just an example of one question being answered, but the impact that made and that carried on thereafter was everlasting, to the point where we took it further, and we decided for something else. We wanted to email President Obama. And we said, you know what? We got our question answered by an author. We're going to try to email President Obama. And actually, one of the students who's going to be joining here, her email was directly responded by President Obama, the President of the United States of America. So this starts this domino effect of, you know what? Even though we are children, even though we are kids, we can make a difference with our voices, and we are being heard. Moving on from Twitter, something that I touched upon was Google Hangouts. So in addition to being able to participate with authors through live Google Hangouts, that was one of the key ways we were able to connect. So again, back to this idea of connectivity. Through Google Hangouts or Skype sessions, we were able to look at each other face to face. We weren't limited by time zones. We weren't limited by locations. We were able to connect. And I feel like there is so much more being possible when you can look at a person face to face and see their emotions. And the idea is that these kids connected maybe through their blogs, connected through chat rooms, but then that moment when they interact face to face, they're much more comfortable, they're much more confident in themselves, and their perspective also is much more open. And I feel like in a world right now where it's full of stereotypes, what we can truly benefit from is this personal interactions and these connections to learn from each other. I would say we got to, over the 6 years, I would say about 40 schools we have been able to connect with, and it's phenomenal. And all this is done because we have a shared passion in breaking down the walls of our classroom. And when you see and when you are given access to a learning network with educators who share that similar passion, I feel like it just makes it that much easier. Being a part of the Global Read Aloud hasn't necessarily been challenging. On the contrary, it's empowering. It's empowering because you realize that you are among so many others, and you're in safe company of many educators who are trying new things, who are sharing their ideas, who are open to making mistakes, and where things don't work out, connections don't get made. And all this time that you are experiencing this, the students are witnessing this. The students are witnessing your Skype session failing. The students are witnessing, you stuttering on screen. And all of this is a learning process for them. The third main tool that I also wanted to share is blogging. And again, it goes back to giving students a voice. Our blogging has evolved over the years. We started out with shorter blog posts using KidBlog. Then later on, we ventured out into the new partnership that Write About has offered for participants in the Global Read Aloud, which was much more interactive. It sets platforms and other writing prompts to developing our own digital portfolios where students can post their work and learn how to embed and learn the legal terms, of common sense media and images that are Creative Commons, from developing their portfolios on Weebly, now Google Sites, and taking it a step further to exploring this idea of HTML code. And the reason why I list all these things is because to understand that it's one opportunity, it's one chance that you as an educator can really venture out and make it your own. You can really play around, and knowing that it's okay to try new things. It's okay for us to fail and to try something else. It's all a learning process that's seen by your students, and they're taking part in that. I feel that blogging really gives students this sense of it's meaningful for them because they realize that their writing is no longer just being seen by their teacher. They're realizing that their writing has an audience now, and a real audience, because that audience is commenting. That audience is made up of, fellow teachers, their family members, other students from other states or other countries. And so when they have that sense of, somebody else is reading it, they put that extra effort. They care more about their writing. And, we talk about this idea of making sure our kids are global citizens and digital citizens, and these terms are being used so constantly. But are we providing them with the opportunities to practice that? Are we providing them with the opportunities to apply all these policies that we're trying to teach them, whether it's internet safety? Are we giving them a chance to explore that? Because the reality is that they are fully exposed to technology and they are going to use it. And so I feel like this is the opportunity to make that technology use meaningful for them and make them realize that they have the power. They have the power to leverage this use of technology in ways that they couldn't imagine. Another tool that we used is this concept of back channel chatting. And so briefly, the tool that we used was Today's Meet. And it gave the students a chance for a less of a formal platform. It was more informal. It was very conversational. The students got to get into small group chats with other classes and basic introductions, talking about themselves. But the part that was amazing too about this was that the fact that they were able to casually chat with students like themselves, that when we took it to the next step and did a Skype session with them, there was already that personal relationship with that class. And so when I had a student, learning that they had, that other classroom had a student with cerebral palsy, to her at that moment, we were reading a novel about the character who had cerebral palsy. And for the student, and Lara today, she'll be sharing that with you. When she was chatting, it was almost like it was a moment of surprise. Oh my goodness, they have a classmate who is similar to our character. And so at the moment when we started Skyping, it was as if they already knew each other. And so when a child already feels comfortable with somebody else, when they're now face to face, their conversations are going to be much more honest. They're going to have the confidence to speak their mind. And then the learning that will come from that will be much more powerful and much more beneficial. I only touched on the main tools. And again, I talked about connection and connectivity. But truly, I want to emphasize again that make it your own. Global Read Aloud is not meant to, is meant to inspire and is meant to empower. And you have access, I promise, you have access to a huge learning network of teachers that's out there willing to share their resources. The ideas that I've taken on were from other educators, and I only felt empowered by them to explore the idea. And so really, Pernille, like, you have created a platform, making it super easy, super resourceful. If you go to her website, all the links are there, and it's just a matter about spending that time doing some exploration. And I feel like we can really benefit one another from that. The Global Read Aloud's impact has been so great that the students have been empowered to take these lessons beyond just the novel, beyond our Skype sessions. From students, after reading the one and only Ivan that you had mentioned, Pernille, a great book that I'm still recommending to today for my students, no matter what grade level that they're in, for adults even. They created websites that talked about animal advocacy. And so they took it beyond the novel. Imagine, I had a student individually create a project based on a character, and I tweeted it out, and the author retweeted that. Imagine what that did for that student. In addition to, we had a happiness project in our school that a student kind of initiated after reading about the effects of bullying. We took it, after reading about Melody, who had cerebral palsy, we went out and we volunteered at the United Cerebral Palsy Center. That was life-changing, and you're going to hear about that experience from Janine today. And so time and time again, these kids feel empowered. You've given them that starting point. You've given them that realization that I have a voice, that there are other kids who are like me, who have similar concerns, similar worries, things that we're commonly nervous about, that I'm not the only one experiencing this. And they've taken it then a step further to spread that awareness, and giving them that voice was so powerful behind that. And I feel like we're in such a time where our world needs so much love and understanding and care, that it's just been a great opportunity where stereotypes have been broken, from all ends, right? The fact that, we can spread compassion, and the way to do that is to get to know one another. And because of the Global Read Aloud, we have been able to achieve that. And I want them to know that our world needs these kids, our world needs them. Our world needs their open-mindedness. Our world needs their creativity. Our world needs their unrelenting desire to connect and to help one another. And I feel like these kids can teach us a lot as adults in terms of being more understanding human beings. And so truly, truly, I am honored to be in the company of some of my students who are my inspiration. Even as they have graduated, they have reminded me again and again, I keep in touch with them, to have open hearts and creative minds, and they aren't bound by the limitations that society has set for them, and that makes me so hopeful. And I'm really extremely honored to introduce the reason why I love doing this, and to give them a chance to share their own stories with you about the GRA. I'd like to welcome Janine and Laura, who are now freshmen in high school, and Sarah, who is now in 7th grade in her first year of middle school. And imagine, these kids are coming on their own time back to school, back to where it all began, because they wanted to take the time and share their stories. And I do hope that you are inspired by them just as much as I have been all these years, and that it'll hopefully, encourage you to look into getting more involved in the Global Read Aloud. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Janine and Laura.
Hi, I'm Janine.
And I'm Laura.
So, as New Horizon alumni, one of the projects that will forever remain in our hearts and minds is definitely the Global Read Aloud project.
As we participated in the Global Read Aloud project, we got to share and experience Melody's story, an 11-year-old girl who had cerebral palsy, with different classrooms across North America. One of the classrooms we connected with was Mrs. Ramsey's 6th grade class in Alabama. When we were talking to another student in one of our chat sessions, they told us that one of their fellow classmates had cerebral palsy. I was extremely surprised at this news and realized how our surroundings and personal experiences could mold the way we interpreted and perceived different things we read about, saw, or even heard. Had we not connected with Mrs. Ramsey's class, I don't think I would have seen the difference of opinion that varying experiences could create. Because the main character, Melody, has cerebral palsy, students in Mrs. Ramsey's class felt a more personal connection to the story than we had. So having conversations with them shed light on different aspects of the book and caused us to think more deeply about what they meant.
It was such a neat opportunity to be able to interact with these different groups of students face-to-face through Skype and Google Hangout, and the fact that we're in different time zones and different states and still had no limitations in engaging with them in real time made our experience so much more relatable. So just as Laura stated, the students shared with us that they have a classmate with cerebral palsy in their very own classroom. And next thing you know, we're meeting the very classmate that they told us about. And at the moment, I felt a rush of realization that we are all the same. So he shared with us that he actually played more sports than our entire classroom combined. And this was the first spark that led to our class's amazing experience throughout the GRA project. And so what was really surprising was the amount of activities and how involved he was. So this inspired every student in the room, and it made us realize that we all deserve an equal amount of love and appreciation. So from this day forward, I always knew that I would strive to give that love and appreciation to everyone I met, no matter who they were.
We continued to blog with Mrs. Ramsey's class using KidBlog, where we also sent reflections and questions back and forth on Twitter and participated in more live chat sessions about the book. We also had a Google Hangout with the actual author herself, where questions were being answered live. And I specifically remember how amazing it felt for the author to answer the question we submitted, because it made us feel that our voices were being heard.
So because this entire experience really truly did inspire us, we decided to take it a step further and take it even beyond the four walls of our classroom and beyond the virtual interactions. So we decided to serve our local community, and we had the amazing opportunity to work directly with students at the United Cerebral Palsy Center and build connections with those kids just like us. They were about 3 or 4 years old, and this opportunity broke stereotypes that children with disabilities are different than us or not as privileged or not as capable as us. But in reality, they share the same interests and the same needs and are simply trying to make their way in the world just as we are. So reading the book is what actually gave me a passion to learn more about the subject. It wasn't just read the book and done, but I have a passion and an interest and connection with these kids with disabilities. And to this day in high school, I actually spend a lot of time with the special ed kids, and I build more connections, and I'm learning more about the disprivileged kids that still are capable of doing what I do. And it's really just an inspiring thing that all actually did start with the Global Read Aloud project. And so it gave me a realization of what it's like to help others. And all my life, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian. But after the Global Read Aloud project, my mind sort of expanded into like thinking of being an occupational therapist or working with children with disabilities. And so without these like engaging conversations within our own classroom and within other classrooms about Out of My Mind and with the author, none of this would have even been a subject for me to think about. And I'm really thankful for that.
So adding on to Janine, I feel that all of us who went to the center had a completely different experience. For me, I realized that it was more about like more than just going as a class, but really making them happy. So during this time, I was like making bows just for fun, and I decided to take a couple bows with me to give to the children who were at the UCP center. So I felt like when I gave them the bows, it changed their day, even though like it showed me how like one action could really change like a full day, because for them, some of them weren't having like the best day possible. And then I remember giving one of the girls a bow, and she stopped crying and looked at herself in the mirror and felt happy. And I really thought that was a really life-changing moment in like even 3 years after, I still remember that like very vividly. And I feel like having reading Out of My Mind and the Global Read Aloud project help us build new connections with people that we might not have even thought about reaching out to. So that's why it really helped change my life.
Speaking of breaking down stereotypes, our class had a similarly enlightening experience after connecting with another classroom. However, the particular story that we would like to share with you today is with another classroom in Louisiana. During our Skype session, we discussed the novel we were reading and realized how many shared experiences we all have with each other, the characters in the book, and in our daily lives. We all share such similar interests, concerns, and experiences. This was one of the highlights of the year as we are given the opportunity to be the narrators of our own stories. It made us realize that we are in charge of who we are and that we are the authors of our own books. We get to develop our own understanding of each other through direct interactions. As we connect with other schools, we are connecting not only for an educational purpose, but as individuals who want to get to know one another on a more human level. After the Skype session, Ms. Beaumont, the teacher of the class we connected with, emailed a teacher with a message that touched us all. So we would like to share an excerpt of it with you. Ms. Beaumont wrote, "At the end of our Skype session, we had an enlightening class discussion about your class and the school your students attend. Most of my students are very sheltered from people of different religious backgrounds, especially Islam, since we live in a highly Christian area. Hopefully we didn't or don't offend you or your class, but some of my students were shocked because you do not all fit the stereotype of Muslims that they sadly see on TV. After hearing our teacher read this thoughtful message to us during class, we realized that we're really all in this learning experience together, and that just like we learned in the shared novel Fish in a Tree, that before we jump to making assumptions or judging one another, we should first learn to get to know one another. This is definitely one of the many reasons why I love Global Read Aloud. It opens up real-life dialogue in the classroom and teaches us real-world lessons. This made me feel better knowing that I'm not being wrongly stereotyped, but being seen for who I really am."
Even though these were two very different experiences, they both had the same effect on the students who were breaking down stereotypes. So for our class, we had a surprise visit from a child who actually had something in common with the main character of our book. And that inspired us to go even further and learn more about cerebral palsy and other disabilities. But in the other case, stereotypes were broken in the form of religion or in the form of media. So both ways, a classroom found out something new, a classroom got a little bit of a surprise, and it was very effective.
So as you heard from both of our stories today, from meeting James and Mrs. Ramsey's class, the other kids at the United Cerebral Palsy Center, to meeting Mrs. Beaumont's class in Louisiana, not only were we able to share our thoughts about different books that we read, our hobbies, and our interests, but we were all able to interact with kids who are just like us, who may happen to have different life experiences or come from various backgrounds, making us all realize that regardless of such differences, we are also strongly interconnected in this ever-shrinking world. Thank you very much for allowing us to share our stories with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to thank everybody. I mean, I feel like they're the best examples of telling the stories more than any of us. It comes straight from their hearts, and I hope you were inspired as I'm inspired every day from, you know, their lessons and what they have to teach me. And because of the Global Read Aloud, that was all made possible. So thank you.
I turned off my video because I have heard Amira's students speak before about their experiences, and I cry every time because no kid is supposed to be out there having to break down stereotypes that adults have made, and yet that is the world that many of our kids face. And so the fact that they're willing to do that so that we can get smarter and make this world a better place, I'm so grateful. So thank you for sharing your stories, Amira, and for having your amazing students share. I'm forever in your debt because that's really what the Global Read Aloud is about. I'm going to stop because I'm just going to cry.
Because I need to keep my cool too.
Yeah. That's the end of our session. Camilla, you can take it away.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pernille, for creating this program, and to Amira and her students for sharing the power of connecting with others around the book, but also learning in real time about others' cultures. Yeah, it's just amazing. Just amazing. So thank you both for sharing this with our audiences. It's a very powerful program. I think I'm going to have to sign up with my students. Thank you again. Just wonderful. The last thing I'm going to do is going to share the upcoming sessions now, when we all can go back and cry about this wonderful experience. So upcoming at 2 o'clock are, I'm going to share this, I think, are the sessions 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. So Chris Lehman is going to share Take Control of Your Professional Learning, Self-Reflection, and Choosing Your Own PD Path. Roslyn Linder and Kelly Sauerbauer are sharing Batman is Not the Superhero, Getting Students Excited About Tolman's Argument. Tammy Mulligan and Claire Landrigan are going to share Engaging Students in the Assessment Process. And Workshop 11 has Julianne Benjamin and Dominic Kelly presenting culturally relevant read-aloud texts. And Christine Torres with her students are going to share Raise Your Voice Student Podcast. We hope to see you in the next session, and thank you, ladies. This is wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you.